The next interview is with Aaron Truss, who is the director of Knox, the Rob Knox story. He was a close friend of Rob's and has been heavily involved in the Rob Knox Foundation.
I need to speak to Damien as well. I haven't spoken to Damien in a while.
I'd like to introduce you to the man who brought myself, Lady Justice podcast and True Crime Fix podcast together, Aaron Truss. Thank you for taking the time to speak with me today. Can you please introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about you?
So my name is Aaron Truss. I am the director of Knox, the Rob Knox story. I was very close friends with Rob, and I'm extremely honoured to be bringing his story to the big screen.
And what part did you play in creating the documentary?
So I was the director and, I'll start again. I am the director and editor, as well as executive producer of the Rob Knox story.
Some big responsibility for in that documentary then. How did you sort of touched upon it that you were friends with Rob. Is this how you got involved in this project?
So Rob's father, Colin, got in touch with me just to basically update me on an ongoing project, a documentary about Rob's life. And I'd been interviewed for it back in 2012, but there hadn't been much news on it. I wasn't really sure what status the film was in. It kind of went into a radio silence for a bit. Colin and I discussed the idea of just taking a look at what had been put on film already. And immediately I knew there was something within the project that could be something great. Not just telling Rob's story, but also highlighting knife crime. This was about 2018 and knife crime had started rising. Like, it was in the news more than it had been in previous years. And it was one of those feelings where it just kind of felt like, we need to do this film. We need to tell Rob's story. But by telling Rob's story, you're actually telling countless other stories of people who've been affected by knife crime, knife violence in the UK. So it kind of went hand in glove, really. There was no question about getting involved in this project. And after a couple of dummy runs with some previous footage, Colin basically turned around to me and said, I want you for the job. I want you to direct and helm this, which is a huge responsibility because I've never done anything long form like this before. My experience had been making short form content for Dad's Army, the Limehouse Golem, a lot of special features, documentary special features for Blu-ray home releases, that kind of thing, and music videos as well. So this was a big endeavor, and I felt that at this point in my career, if I was going to ever embark on a feature film, then I would be so proud to have it be about my friend Rob.
Can I ask you this? When you set about doing a project such as this, how much of an emotional toll did it take on you and all of those who were involved in this project who knew Rob?
This was an extremely draining production, just in terms of the sheer fact that Rob is in my thoughts every day. I often think about him and the good times we had, but when you open that can of worms and you have to go through everything, not just his life, because Rob had, as short as Rob's life was, he had a fantastic life. He had a fantastic family. He had a fantastic group of friends, which I was lucky to be a part of. But you are going to, and this is something that I was very wary of taking on the project, which was, I am going to have to cover the night he died. I am going to cover the bad things that happened to Rob and his family. And that, to me, gave me complete anxiety. There were lots of sleepless nights. My girlfriend, bless her, she had to put up with a lot of mood swings just because you are reliving it, essentially. Not only are you piecing everything that happened together for audiences to see in a way that people can understand what happened. But when you do go down that hole, it's very hard to get out of. I'm sitting here at my computer editing things together as we're filming as well, so I can get a good idea of sequences, how they should be laid out. And for example, we get to the hospital and Rob is pronounced dead, and that took its toll on me. There's some interviews with Colin and Sally and Jamie, which just knock the wind out of you, and you can't help but just down tools and walk away for a bit, because it is so hard. And I didn't think it would be as hard as it would have been, because obviously I lived some aspect of the events that happened. I wasn't there, but I had my own experiences of how I found out about it, what it meant to me. But to relive it through Nick Jones, to relive it through Jamie, that was really hard. I'm not going to lie. It does. Again, I said it kept me up at night, and it really did. I'd be laying in bed, pieces in my head, but also going back to what actually happened at the Metro Bar. And it really, really is hard. But at the end of the day, when you look at the first run of the film, when we had an edit together, which was last year, and we watched it all back with the family, and we had a few little screenings for, Rob's friends, Rob's family. And I don't know what's harder, putting the documentary together on my own, sitting in my office doing it, or having to watch it all the way through with Jamie or with Rob's family. And it was extremely hard, because as a storyteller and person who's woven this together, certain bits are coming up in the film that are going to cause distress, and we had to make it as realistic and as truthful as possible. So that was hard.
I think, having been fortunate enough to watch the documentary, I think I can only imagine, because as a viewer who had no personal connection to Rob, you get this sort of, you're happy when we're talking about, as you say, Rob had a short life, but crammed so much in. I couldn't believe it, with all his acting jobs that he did. There's that sort of, there is that happiness, that joy in watching that on the screen. And then there are those, it's just complete roller coaster, because then there are those moments where you can feel yourself going. And so I think it's a testament to everybody involved in this project that they were willing to relive something quite traumatic, so traumatic for Jamie, for example, and with the bigger aim, I suppose, of creating awareness. That's what this whole project is about. So I think that's absolutely incredible, and it is an incredible documentary. What can you tell us about this documentary without giving away any spoilers?
Okay. That's a tough question. I think I can tell you quite a bit about the documentary, actually. You were mentioning about the fact that you get close to Rob as a viewer, as an audience member, and that was something that Colin and I agreed with from the very start of the project when I joined on. And I made it a mission of mine to find as much photos as I could, find as much footage of Rob in his acting career, as well as home videos, things like that. And
I loved the home videos.
Home videos are fantastic. There's stuff in there where, I had never seen before. Rob's family hadn't seen for years, just because they were in an attic somewhere gathering dust. And to play it all back and watch it was one of the highlights of working on this film, because obviously I knew Rob very well, but to see him on holiday, to see him in Cinderella,
Yeah,
Quite funny. Thank you to Nikki, because I did chase that footage for a long time.
it's definitely worth the chasing, though.
Definitely. And it just became something that Colin and I decided that we needed as much Rob in there as possible. And the way to build the narrative, we were very conscious that we didn't want a typical true crime documentary where we focus too much on the negative, because then your character and the whole, the color and the shape of him just becomes someone who died. And we didn't want that. We wanted Rob to be the main character of our film, as if it was a story, like a typical movie. We wanted people to actually go through the heartbreak, the moments that we lose Rob. We thought that was very important to keep in there, but it would only matter if people knew who Rob was. Rob wasn't an angel. He was quite cheeky. There is a lot of flesh and texture there that just needed to be included. And I think that's why the documentary works so well, because he isn't just someone on the face of the sun who is cut down, Harry Potter actor cut down in the prime of his life. This is someone that you follow essentially from birth to wanting to be an actor, getting the job done. And, when Rob gets the gig in Harry Potter, we celebrate with him. It's an exciting part of the film. Will he get it? Won't he get it? Of course, we know he got it, but the journey we take just makes the events that soon follow all the more poignant and gravely serious.
Absolutely. Speaking of Rob, this project is one of a number of things. I spoke to Joe, as you know, and when Joe and I were talking, I said, "What's incredible is that these are family members, friends who have lost someone so close to them, such a bright light in their life, and yet they've taken something so tragic and they've charged all their energy into this documentary, but also the Rob Knox Foundation." Can you tell the listeners, please, about the purpose of this foundation?
Well, the Rob Knox Foundation came into existence a year after Robert died. I believe that it takes a year it takes a year for a charity to become a charity. As far as I think it's still the same rules apply now. It wasn't called the Rob Knox Foundation when it started, but eventually it became a bit of a monster. It kind of snowballed. Rob's death was a huge wake-up call, simply because of the connection to Harry Potter, I think, and the which he passed. So the foundation quickly started finding its feet when it tapped into wanting harsher sentences on people who carry knives in the UK. And that was something that Colin and Sally, it became their mission for the next couple of years, working with Gordon Brown, going to 10 Downing Street, really getting to the heart of the issues. That eventually begun to branch out into the art side of things as well, which Colin pretty much heads himself, which was the Rob Knox Film Festival, which is another branch of the foundation, which does a fantastic job. I'll get to that in a bit. The Rob Knox Film Academy, which probably does even more than the film festival, to be honest. But the foundation itself originally was set up to highlight knife crime in the UK, visit schools, visit prisons, talking to people about something that hasn't really affected a lot of people. If you're not affected by knife crime, then it's just not going to affect you at all, really. It's one of those things where unless you know someone or have lost someone, it doesn't become gravely real. So that was the job of the foundation in the very beginning, was going out there, using Rob's name, using his image from Harry Potter to spread the word. And I'm very happy to say that it's still going to this day, 12 years later. The foundation is still doing a fantastic job of speaking to people, visiting schools, and the foundation with the film festival and the film academy, they're still going strong as well. So I think that's just a testament to Rob's name and his legacy, really.
Absolutely. I love the idea of there being this film festival. And when you and I have spoken before, you've said that you get entries from all over all over the globe. You get entries and films of all different genres, styles, natures, etc. And I think knowing that Rob was a lover of the arts and drama, I think that is an amazing way, an amazing tribute to somebody. I think it's fab. If someone wanted to support the foundation or take part maybe in the film festival, how can they do so?
Okay, so if you want to know more about Rob and the foundation, the best place to go is to robknox.org. So this will have
I'll put that in the show notes.
Fantastic. So robknox.org, it has all the information about Rob, his family. There's some photos there. They're also available on Facebook, Twitter. So you can find out all the information about what the foundation does, who they're working with. I believe Colin is starting a blog on robknox.org, so he'll be able to keep people posted on developments with the foundation, especially the documentary as well. The documentary has its own social presence.
Mm-hmm.
On Twitter, you can find it at hashtag RobKnoxFilm, or on Facebook, it's Rob Knox Documentary. So we operate slightly differently to the foundation, but we felt it was very important to keep those aspects separate because otherwise it just gets too complicated otherwise. But yeah, if you want to find out about the foundation or the documentary, we are on all socials.
Perfect. And are there any final thoughts that you have that you'd like to share with those who are listening?
I would like to thank everyone who's listening to this podcast right now. It's been an absolute pleasure working with you, Emily, Steve, Chantel, on this. I don't really do podcasts, and it's absolutely fantastic to be appearing or being able to tell Rob's story on 3 in one massive episodic collection. It's amazing. It just blows my mind how lovely, how warm the true crime community is. I'm very new to it, so I never once considered the documentary to be true crime, but actually it's very true crime, and I'm still learning the ropes as we're going along. So I just want to say thank you to everyone who's been listening to these podcasts, who's given us the time of day. Thank you, and I can't wait to show you the documentary.
And you really need to those who are listening, you need to watch this documentary. All of this is thanks to Aaron, who we're thankful back at you because you're the one who brought us together to collaborate on this project. And I think even though we're 3 separate podcasts, the fact that we can come together, tell Rob's story, and hopefully raise awareness about the documentary, about the foundation, about the film festival, but also there is the more serious aspect, which is around knife crime. I'll leave the links in the show notes for you to have a look at. Please, 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 if you can, support the foundation. Even if you just go and share it, whatever, please, please, please do. A huge thank you to Aaron for joining me today. I really, really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Just to add, we also have a trailer on YouTube if you want to check that one out.
I'll put that in the show notes as well.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
£20 worth spent. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Aaron.
Thank you.
The final person we're going to hear from is Rob's father, Colin Knox. There's a reason why I've left his interview until last. When I was interviewing Colin, it was such an emotional and thought-provoking conversation. But just a warning, you will cry. I'd like to introduce to the show a very, very special guest, Colin Knox, Rob's father. Thank you so much for joining me today, Colin. Could you please introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about you?
Hi, thanks. As introduced, my name is Colin Knox. I'm the father of Rob Knox, the Harry Potter actor that was murdered in 2008. Rob played Marcus Belby in Half-Blood Prince. I'm divorced. I live alone. I'm retired, and I currently live in Hawkinge near Folkestone.
Before we get into the trial, which is what we're going to be focusing on in this episode, can you tell those listening about Rob and what he was like?
Let's start with the worst part of his character. Isn't it? It's not bad, but he's quite mischievous. He wasn't harmful. He was funny, thoughtful. This is the type of kid that he was. Okay, I forget how old he was, but he was in his early teens, I think, and mid-teens, and I think I was about to leave the matrimonial home due to divorce. And just before that, I gave him, parents collect these large jars of bottles of coins.
Yeah.
And it was full, and I thought, I don't really, give it to the kids. So I said to Rob, being the oldest one, I said, Rob, take this and spend it how you like on a pair of trainers or a shirt or something. Well, I found out what he did do. He took the money down to Barclays Bank, put it into an account for Save the Children in Africa. Every penny. He didn't spend a penny on himself. And that's type of guy that he was. He was a great brother to Jamie, his brother Jamie, also an actor. And they'd done everything together. Parkour, filming, taekwondo. And he was a fabulous son. Very proud of him. You
said that he was mischievous. How do you mean? I'm intrigued.
First thing that springs to mind, there was a party, I think it was 16, 17-year-old party. The house was full of about 30 young members of that age. There was about 30 of them anyway. And we had quite a large house. We had a 5-bedroom house, so we had plenty of room. So my then wife and I sat in my computer room while all the noise was kicking off, playfully. And then I'd reason to sort of calm them down a bit. So I went into the kitchen stroke diner, and I sort of lay down the law. Now, come on, keep the noise down, you shouldn't be drinking, Walked out, and as I walked out, I heard, and I turned around and I said, who was that? I started saying, don't be disrespectful. I'm blaming all his friends. Don't be disrespectful to me, my wife, as she was then. You hear as guests, behave yourself. And I really sort of laid into him as an adult to younger people. I was just laying the law down, basically. And it transpires, it was Robert. He comes to me about half an hour later and apologised and said, I'm sorry, Dad, it was me. But I blamed his friends for it. So that is something that he's done.
A cheeky chappy then, for sure.
He's like me. He likes to sort of entertain people.
Yeah.
But, he didn't really cross the line, but at school and at D&B, his theatre group, he was the same. Even on the film set in Harry Potter, he said that he was cheeky, but he was likeable.
Oh, bless him. I know that this is not going to be an easy conversation for us to have, because we are going to delve into the trial of the defendant in this case. What was your first thought when you heard that the defendant, having been through everything that you'd been through up until that point, when you found out that the defendant was going to plead not guilty? What were your thoughts?
Can I just pause there for a second and just go back to the previous question
Of course.
about Rob?
Yeah.
Soon after his death, weeks after his death, we was contacted by Kent Constabulary, the police force,
Yeah.
with a letter saying that Rob Knox will be posthumously awarded a bravery award. I thought, what the hell's this? And it transpires. Now, remember that, for your listeners, Rob was killed on May the 24th,
Yes.
2008. That date is relative. Because on May the 24th, 2007, a man, I think, entered into Marks and Spencer's where Rob was working. This man attacked a woman, and she had blood come from her head. So Rob and a security guard chased him out of M&S Bluewater, across the car park into some woods, and held him there until the police turned up and arrested him.
That's incredible.
And when I read that letter that came from Kent Constabulary, I cried, because Rob should have been there to receive that award, which turned out to be a posthumous award. So that had to be said, because it's all about Rob's character, who he was, what he was.
Oh, it's incredible. I mean, that's such a selfless thing to do, and lots of people, I think, in that circumstance might sort of gather, but not really take any sort of action themselves. So I think that's incredible.
I mean, to be honest, he didn't make much of it. On recall, I think he did mention it at the time, but it was meaningless. I mean, it was, what happened today, Robbie, blah, 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 and move on. He didn't make a big thing out of it. So, but I was a very proud parent when I picked his award up, to be honest.
So you picked it up for him?
My ex-wife and myself, yeah. We went there at an award ceremony, and yeah.
That's amazing.
He should have received that. It was his actions to put a wrong correct, or right or wrong. Which
is how. So on the night that he died, it was that same bravery, if you want to word it that way.
Yeah.
That meant he was looking out for his brother, his friends.
He's like
is that right?
Because he was bullied at school. In his first and second senior year, he was bullied. The last time I remember him being bullied, he's on the phone to me, and there's students, throwing cans of Coke at him. I'm fully loaded, and I said, "Right, get yourself home." So he's been through that before. So he doesn't like injustice. He likes fair play, and he doesn't like bullies. So that's the type of person that he was.
So those experiences shaped him.
Yeah,
hugely.
In actual fact, it started in junior school. I remember walking to the shop. We used to go on like a Saturday morning and walk to the shop to get a newspaper. And on the way back, he said, "Dad, there's a boy that keeps on punching me in school." I said, "Have you told the teachers?" He said, "Yes." And he said, "What's happened?" He said, "Nothing." And I'd done something that some parents probably would do and some probably wouldn't do. I said, "The next time he tries to do that or does it, see that." And I showed him my fist, and I said, "Clench your fist like this. If he does it again, punch him on the nose." Next week we went for a walk. He didn't say anything in the meantime. Next week we went for a walk. And I said, "Oh, by the way, how did it go in school?" I said, "I punched him." And what happened? He said, "He fell on the floor." I went, "Okay, and then what?" He said, "He wanted to be my friend." Now, I don't like violence. I don't like just to hit people. But if someone's hitting my children and is not being protected by the school, he had to do something to stop it. And I don't encourage fights, but he wasn't invoking a fight. He was preventing himself from getting bullied.
Yeah, it worked. Yeah, and I'm glad that he was able to stand up for himself, take those experiences, turn it into something positive, where he was looking out for those who needed him.
Yeah.
Because from his photos, he seems quite tall,
yes,
quite sort of stocky, and so
he was
I imagine
6'1". He was quite tall, quite
Yeah.
thick set. He'd done taekwondo. I know he got stabbed to death, but I mean, taekwondo doesn't help when the guy's got 2 knives and stuff. But
no.
yeah. So your question was about
Yeah,
in court, wasn't it? About
but when you heard he was going to plead not guilty,
right? I was shocked, but not surprised. I'll tell you for why. This is before the court case, but soon after he was arrested. When they put him in the van after being arrested, after carrying 2 knives with blood on them, and he was saying, "Why do you arrest me?" He sat in the back of the van and asked how a boxing match went that was on TV that night because he was missing it. He'd just been told that he had just killed someone, and I think one of his first replies was, "How did the boxing match go?" He had no remorse. He had no concern about other people's life, more about a boxing fight that was on TV that he's going to miss. And that
speaks volumes, doesn't it?
Yeah. I suppose it wasn't a surprise to hear that he said he's not guilty, because he doesn't want to say I'm guilty. He thinks he might have a chance by saying I'm not guilty, but the evidence was stacked up so much, it was a stupid call. But yeah, shocked but not surprised.
And what was it like? I mean, I can't even imagine. But what was it like for you and your family and for Rob's friends to be in that court for that trial? If you can sum it up, I can only imagine how hard.
It's very emotional on a daily basis, right?
Yeah.
I mean, not only the court, but there was a massive press/media presence. So sometimes we had to go in the back door, sometimes the front door. Unfortunately, I had a lovely family liaison officer that stood by me for a couple of years, I think. I'll come to why it was 2 years, because he was, I think, in court after about a year of killing someone. And not only that, sitting close to the murderer to my left, 12 to 16 feet away, in court, because normally people sit in a gallery to watch the proceedings, but we were allowed some sort of dispensation. We were allowed to sit on the base level of the courtroom, sitting next to all the court officials and close to the murderer. And being that close, it was, I wanted to look, but didn't look. I may have looked once. I just didn't want to look at him, because that's the man only a few yards away that purposely went home on the night that Rob was killed, after an altercation. To be fair, there was a bit of a punch-up, to put it that way. He started a ruckus somewhere. So he went home, and he had probably at least a 10-minute walk home, 5-minute search for 2 knives, and 10 minutes walk back. So let's make it a rounded half an hour to think about what he was going to do. And he came back with 2 knives, because he said the week before the incident, a guy heard him at a bus stop, independent of anything that went on, heard him say, "I will come back next week and someone's going to die." And he lived up to his word. He came back with 2 knives and used them wantonly. I mean, he injured 4 other people. Knife went through Nick's hand, straight through. Someone was, I think anyway, there's 4 other people that are severely injured, and Rob received 5 stab wounds to his body, and one of them pierced his aorta. and the chances are that he was probably died within a minute or two of being stabbed. But we had to go through the proceedings, and, go to hospital and wait for the medical officer to sort of claim that he was, well, to clarify that he had passed, and he was dead. So sitting close to that person, that animal, had no care about life, other people's life. He didn't even think about the consequences. He had half an hour to think about that. Consequences is a very serious thing, because once that happens, I mean, a knife carrier. Okay, what's the difference between a knife carrier and the murderer? The difference is a split second. That's all it is.
So true.
Once people start fighting, they up the ante every time. It starts with a suggestion, a word, a swear word, a punch. Someone gets a brick, someone gets and then say, okay, I've got a knife. So it steps itself up. If you get into that arena, it steps up, and if you haven't got control over your actions or your thought processes, if you're carrying a knife, you're going to use it. And not only that, if you do use a knife and it drops, it could be used against you. And funnily enough, at Elmley Prison in Kent, which I've been to a couple of times, but on one occasion I took a film that I made called Cold Kiss. It was a 15-minute shortly film. Ray Winston was in it, my son Jamie was in it, Joe Akers was in it, and we took it there to show it to some guys that were on the cusp of leaving prison, say within a year. And it's probably a part of an exit program, so it was there to sort of promote discussion about the film, to get them talking. And when we was there was a guy that wanted to speak to me, a murderer. My ex-wife wasn't there, but I was there. He asked if you could have a one-to-one. And I said, yeah, sure. So I sat opposite him, and I think the first thing he said to me was, how am I perceived out there, which is in the wider world? And I said, well, no one gives a damn about you. You murdered someone, you got 20 years for it. No one's not concerned. You're probably, your mum and dad might be, and your close family might be, but no one gives a damn about you. And I said, well, what happened to you? You told me what happened in his case. He was attacked. He was an innocent person being attacked. Someone attacked him with a knife. And that person that was carrying the knife dropped it.
No.
So this guy that was accused of, he's in prison for murder, he picked it up and used it against the guy that was attacking him. But what happened was, according to law, if you pick up something, a piece of wood or a brick or a knife, if you know full well that will cause severe injury or death, that's still classed as premeditation. It's not about, well, next week I'm going to go up to Charlie's house and I'm going to wait in the bushes and I'm going to attack him. He picked this up in self-defense. Unfortunately, what he done, he used it excessively. So there's multiple stab wounds. Probably if he'd done it once and saved himself, he may have got away with it, but he didn't. And this guy was a religious, educated guy. He was unfortunate to be picked out by someone for an attack. He used the attack as a weapon, and he used it, according to law, to excess, which they say is murder.
But in that moment, you're not going to think, oh, I'm doing too much. You know, he probably was acting, like you said, in what was a split second moment of panic. We don't think clearly when in that circumstance. So you're right. I can't believe that. It's such an extraordinary story, but you're right. As soon as a knife drops, you might not have intended to ever use a knife, but if it drops, you've picked it up. It can so easily go either way. the way to try and stop it is that nobody brings any kind of knife to any kind of scenario. But talking about the defendant in this case, like you said, he had half an hour to make a different choice.
Mm-hmm.
He could have gone home, and maybe he was fired up, okay, but go home. Maybe he's gone home, and in that walk home, he's calmed down and he just walks away.
Well, the thing is about the defendant, Mr. Defendant, is that I think he had served some sort of time for knife carrying before. After that, it transpires that I think he pulled a knife on someone on a bus. So there's an open case with the police for them to pursue this guy. Unfortunately, it was only like a couple of weeks before Rob was killed. Unfortunately, they didn't follow up on the case, and the file was probably put in the wrong basket, put to one side, and it gave Mr. Defendant a license to roam around until the fateful night that he used weapons on Rob and his friends. And none of them were armed. All the people that tried to get the knives off the defendant. But they weren't carrying knives or guns or anything. They may have picked up a bottle in self-defence, I think Nick said in his statement. But he put it down after he thought it was a baiting. He didn't abate, it got worse. Yeah, so knife carrying isn't a wise thing to do.
No.
I said to those people that was what I call the exit program in Elmley Prison, when I took the film there, I said to them, I asked them to answer 20 questions. Do you like holidays? Do you like your family? Do you like sex? All the drinking, going out with your friend? And every box was ticked. Yes, 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 yes. I said, well, please remember those things that you want. There's 20 things in favour and 1 against. And whatever you've done to bring you into prison has taken you away from those 20 things dear to you. So when you exit the prison, remember 20 to 1. Think of those 20 beautiful things that you could have, but you don't have at the moment. And if it's because you've stolen something, punked someone, fraud, whatever it is, think about the consequences. There's no winners with knife carrying. No winners.
That's such a good point. That's such a good way of thinking about it, because also looking at the wider group of people affected in Rob's case alone, Rob's is one case of, unfortunately, so many involved in knife crime. And yet you think how many people his case has affected. You've got the defendant as well, and all the people it's affected sort of on his side of things. But it's not so simple as to say there's one perpetrator and one victim.
No.
There's so many people.
There's thousands of victims, because it ripples out. It becomes your mum, your dad, and then your brothers and sisters, aunts, uncles, friends, work colleagues. It ripples out. I mean, let alone anyone on the police on the front line. You've got to protect the police as well. I mean, you've got to oppose knife carrying, and the sentencing is woeful. I remember speaking to Gordon Brown at number 10, and it's just before the election that the Labour Party lost, and he told me that in the curriculum, if Labour Party got in, there will be half an hour a week what they call citizenship.
Yeah.
How to behave itself to be a good citizen. And they lost the election, and then when the Conservatives got in, they said, I went to speak to the Educational Minister and run that past him, and he went, not interested. He wasn't going to put it on the curriculum. I saw the Labour Party thought it was good. I'm not being political, by the way. These are facts that have happened. I'm talking about someone sees it this way, someone sees it that way. And I spoke to the Educational Minister, and he wasn't he wasn't up for it. So the Conservatives now got in, and you read the manifesto, and it said it was a massive, long, couple of A4 sheets of paper about the statement about fighting crime and knife crime. And what happened, there was one word in there that changed the emphasis completely. Anyone that gets caught carrying a knife, this is the crux word, may, not will, may face custodial sentencing. Now, may, that's his get-out clause. If it doesn't happen, so we did say may, not will. I want a will, not a may. It's an assertiveness. I do believe in proactivity, not reactivity. Now, Theresa May stands by when she was in power. She stood by. We will do our best to bring those to court that killed someone. So no, we shouldn't be doing that. We should be. We shouldn't be chasing murderers around. We should be preventing murders. So that Theresa May's comment doesn't make sense to me. Yeah, we do our best. Will you tell the bereaved families that the police, we're now going to find out who done that? Well, why didn't you have stronger measures in place to prevent knife carrying? Knives aren't a problem. It's the knife carrier.
Yeah.
Knives aren't a problem. We all got them in our drawers in our home, in our kitchens.
Mm.
It's only a problem when it gets in someone's hands and it's the carrier which is the problem. We have to punish the carrier, not the knife. Because if the knife stays in the drawer, it's no harm to anyone.
So true. So true. And I suppose for you, with the knowing that the defendant had previous, when it came to knife crimes, that must have been, I don't even know what the right word is, but that must have been so hard to know that he had previous.
Yes, in fact, we went to the police commissioner in London. We had three meetings with him.
Yeah.
He looks a bit shaky and a bit scared because we had a high profile at the time because of Rob's demise and being attached to Harry Potter. And he was looking at what had happened 2 weeks prior to Rob's death, because the defendant was, say, on the wanted list. He was needed for questioning about a previous altercation. And after about the third meeting, he assured us that the system had changed. He was saying that shouldn't happen again. I think two of the policemen involved, one of them left straight away and one retired or something. And I sent a message back through the commissioner that the family do not blame the officers. They blame the system.
Yeah.
If the officers are acting within a system and the system doesn't work correctly, then things like that will happen. So, we had 3 meetings with him, and he assured us that, I think Cressida Dick was around at the time, but she wasn't top notch at the time. She was a senior officer, but not as high as a commissioner at the time. So that was a meeting at Scotland Yard that happened on 3 occasions. We was trying to get change as much as we could. We've been everywhere. I spoke to Prince Charles, Princess Anne, Prime Minister, educational ministers, Home Secretary, and that was a joke. We sat around this. We went to the Home Office, spoke to the Home Secretary, and we sat around this elongated table, and there's about 16 of us around the table, for argument's sake, 16. And it was a case of getting introduced to department heads, right? Oh, my name is that went on for eons, okay? And then I think the Home Secretary was called into chambers or something for a vote, so he disappeared, and there was about 5 or 10 minutes left, and it was decided that another meeting should be catered for. No serious dialogue went on. It was an absolute sham. I think it was an hour meeting. Nothing had happened.
bit of a waste of time then, by the sounds of things.
Absolutely.
I mean, I do think it's incredible, and we will go on to this, but some of the things that you've been able to achieve in Rob's honor, I think it's amazing. Because I've spoken to Joe and I've spoken to Aaron about the foundation, and shortly I want to hear about it from your point of view. We've talked about this. You've touched upon it briefly when you said that when the defendant was arrested, he was asking about this boxing match, and that to me speaks volumes. How did he come across to you in court? Had his behaviour changed? Was there any sort of noticeable remorse, anything like that at all?
Remorse is something I've never seen him preach, ever. He was very arrogant, cocky, showed no remorse whatsoever. And he used to sit in court, sometimes with his arms across the back of his chair, looking up at the gallery and waving to his friends like it was some sort of film show or something. He was a cocky, arrogant, remorseless person. That there's only one person that mattered in this world, and no one else. He just had this I don't care attitude. And there is something that I was going to refer to something that later on, but I'll bring it up now because it's about his character. There's a thing called a impact statement.
Yes.
Okay. Now I think at the time there were changes going through where the parents could read it out. I can't remember. I don't think we did. I think it was left either to the judge or the prosecutor to read out the impact statement. Now, for your listeners, an impact statement is how this can only be read out after the defendant's been found guilty. If he's innocent, that doesn't get read out. It's a moot point. It only gets read out in court after he's been found guilty. So it's either the judge or the prosecution barrister that read out our personal handwritten statements, impact statements. Now, because we were divorced, we was allowed to submit two, because we weren't a collective, because we were divorced. So we both had our own, a family interpretation, although we still are his parents. Now, an impact statement is read out, is what it says on the tin. It's how it impacted on our lives, the loss of Rob being murdered, how it impacted. So we go through all the, I can't hold him anymore, I can't kiss him anymore, I can't go to his wedding, he can't go to my funeral. Anything that emotionally disturbed us, and that which was our loss. So that is read out in court. I nearly said the man's name then. The defendant stayed in the cell while it was read out. Now, that man, and I think it should be, I don't know if it's changed or not, it should be law that if anyone's found guilty of murder, is brought back into the courtroom while that impact statement is read out. But he chose to sit in his cell. And I think two things should happen. And I think the change may have happened as regards the impact statement being read out by the parents. I think that may have changed. But I don't know whether or not the person that's been found guilty of a murder, or whenever an impact statement needs to be read out, whether that person's allowed to stay in the cell, downstairs, wherever it is, or be in the courtroom. I think if the address hasn't been made yet, I think the people reading out the impact statement, you should be allowed to say it because it's their words, their thoughts about their loss, and not through a third party. And secondly, any person found guilty should be the recipient of an impact statement. He should be in the courtroom listening to those emotional words read out by the people that he written the impact statement.
I don't even know how you would begin to try and put your feelings into a statement, a document, because how do you convey everything you're feeling? And then, as you say, to know that he chose to stay in the cell and to almost not face the reality that you and your family and Rob's friends have to live every day.
Well, it shows that the remorse wasn't there. It shows that he wasn't concerned about anyone else. His only concern was himself. He's probably thinking, so what? I've been found good. I'm not going to listen to blah, blah, blah. I mean, you know, if they're going to punish him by giving him 20 years, a part of that punishment should be for him to stand or sit in that court, stand out of respect and not sit, stand in that court. He should be asked to stand up, not look at us, it doesn't have to, and listen to those emotional words. Because everything that we've enjoyed about Rob has gone. Any person that loses one of their children, anyone in their family, all those contact words, those smells, all the fun that you've had, all the future things that you look forward to are not going to happen.
Yeah.
And I remember when soon after Rob was born, when we took him out of hospital and brought him home for the first time, I cradled him in my arms, took him out to the back garden, and I said, Rob, welcome to the family. Your mother and I love you, and we will always look after you and love you. And I always remember saying that to him. And when he was killed, immediately I thought, I've let him down. I thought, well, he was getting on for 18, and he was a man in his own world, and I can't walk around changing his diaper in a pub, you know, it doesn't work, and he has to live his own life and walk his own trail, and then I thought about it. I thought, no, you're being slightly hard on yourself, Colin. He was a young grown up. He was.
Yeah.
You know, he was of an age for drinking and driving and voting. So, although I promised him I would protect him, we did. We brought 2 boys up correctly, and they were lovely boys. And they, I mean, Jamie's lost a friend. Because my mum said to me when she found out that when we were going to have our first child, I think she may have known it was going to be a boy, and she said, not only should your son be your son, but let him make sure that he's your best friend too. And that was strange coming from Mum, because my family weren't tactile. I never heard my mum or dad ever say to me, I love you, or even get a hug. I don't remember that. But they were wise words, and I think I would have done that anyway, because that's natural for me. I'm tactile, and every time that I spoke to Rob and Jamie, when I left them, I always told them I loved them.
Yeah.
Even at the age of 17, Robbie had a Mickey Mouse that we bought when he was knee-high to a grasshopper, and he went to bed with that every night. And I think he still went to bed with it at that age that he was, 17 and a bit. And I said to my ex-wife's Rob's mum, I said, "What Mickey Mouse to be washed and put in the coffin with Robert. He's got to be buried with his friend." And the strange things we knew, I'm rambling on now.
It's fine.
We knew, I don't know how it came about, but when Rob used to chill with his mates, you know,
Yeah.
and have a hot dog or a Krispy Kreme donut or a beer, they would sit around and chat. And some friends approached us to say, Rob doesn't want a black hearse. He doesn't want people to wear dark clothing. He wants people to be happy at his funeral. So we got a white hearse, and everyone wore bright clothing, no black. And it's strange how that came about.
That is weird.
Yeah, it's weird. And thumbs up to Krispy Kreme donuts. After we had 2 ceremonies for Robert back at Sidcup Rugby Football Club, they sent up 500 Krispy Kreme donuts.
Wow. I mean, oh gosh, I'm getting all tearful. That's so weird that conversation came up.
Yeah. Why young people? I don't know what age they were, but obviously it's pre 17 years of age.
Yeah.
And I think in our office when I used to work, about 2 years before that, people were saying in the office, "What would you do if?" It's like what you do when win the pools type of question. What would you do if? It never comes into reality, but what would you do if your son was killed or family a member of your family was killed? Oh, do you know what I would do? Yeah. You talk tough.
Yeah.
But as soon as we were told that Rob had passed or murdered, the other side of the coin appeared. It was we wanted to fight knife crime. We didn't want to waste our time accusing the murderer. That's been done. It's been taken to court. It's been found guilty. So we want to act in the positive.
Yeah.
With the foundation. So we've got two strings to our bow. Being a registered charity, one is to fight knife and gun crime and antisocial behaviour, and in the arena of the arts, there's a good caveat, if I can remember it when I come back to that. So with the fighting the knife crime side, we hooked up with Charlton Athletic, but with the community trust. It was a part of the club, but it was a separate entity within the club, the Charlton Community Trust, and they do fantastic work out there. And we was on the steering committee, well, we still are for years. Sally takes a stronger presence now because I now work on the art side. Because when I used to work, I found it hard after a year or two why to go to places and speak to dignitaries and God knows what else. So my name wasn't on the tongue of people or lips of people that wanted someone to come and speak to their schools or colleges and stuff. So I sort of ventured into the art side. But we had that. We also had the Rob Knox Film Festival, which we run every year. It's been going every year since 2009. It was previously called the Bexley Heath Film Festival. And we was contacted by Mike Waring, who suggested, can we put Rob's name to it? I said, certainly. And it's been going from strength to strength every year, apart from this year. It happens in the first Wednesday in every June. Well supported by lots of people. We've had winners from Brazil, America, and other places. Yeah. One guy actually brought his family over to receive the Rob Knox Best Director Award. And he brought two kids. They weren't kids, they were like late teens, early 20s. And he brought his wife and his family over to receive. I was sort of blown away by this. I said, how did you, to this guy from America, I said, how did you why would you want to get connected? Not why did you get connected to the Rob Knox Film Festival? He said, we like Harry Potter, we like what we saw, and I just wanted to enter this into your festival. And I was like blown away, like, wow. It was, anyway, so, and after that, a few years ago, we received a large grant from the Commissioner, Kent Police, granting us money to start up a film academy where we invite young people from the age of 14 to 20, I think it was, that wanted to get involved in filmmaking. So there was a course that they went through, headed up by Mike Waring, my film director, the director of the film festival. And they were taught everything from how to write a script, you encompass lighting, sound, camera work, script writing, you name it, funding. We show people what it takes to make a film, and they would take part in every part. And the end result was that, to make a short film about knife crime, which they made, and they they managed the equipment themselves. They were shown how to use it, and there's some short clips in the documentary, I think, as well, of some of the action. I think towards the back end of the documentary, of those young people, getting quite excited about getting involved in filmmaking. So we had that, and also only for about 2 or 3 years, because it was quite costly, we had what we called a bursary. We funded a student at the D&B Performing Arts in Bromley. That's where Rob and Jamie went to as students. And what we done as a foundation, as a charity, we would fund someone that had the ability to go on to strive to better things, a potential to show they can move on, but they might have been hampered or impeded by funds. It's something they could have shone in, but couldn't get there because they couldn't support themselves for 3 years. So what the foundation done is they set up this bursary for a student to win that, and it lasted 3 years. So we used to sit through auditions, watching the students perform, choosing those that could potentially go on to great things. And I'll show you, there's a name that will drop at the back end of this comment that proves that it worked in that instance. They could go on and didn't have sufficient funds to support them for 3 years. So the first person that won it, a black female, I forget her name now, she done quite well. The second and last one, because it's quite an expensive thing to do, went through the system, was chosen. And he went on to some sort of notoriety and fame on TV. And you remember X Factor?
Yeah.
Remember a guy called Matt Terry?
Yeah.
Right. He was awarded the Rob Knox Foundation bursary for 3 years at D&B Performing Arts in Bromley. So it makes me chill to think that on the positive side, because 99.9% of people are good, why are we ignoring them? That's why we have the art side.
Yeah.
And then the 1% of the people go around doing stupid stuff. But you've got to address both.
Yeah.
You shouldn't give 100% just to knife crime, because you're forgetting about the good people. Keep them good, and you may encourage people that aren't good to come on the good side. So we set that bursary up, and Matt Terry was something that made us proud of what we invested our support into. I think it stopped after that because it's quite expensive.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, it's thousands.
I love that there's that dual aspect though, as you say, because I was saying to Aaron, and I said to Joe as well, I find it so commendable that in your grief, because it would have been very easy, I would imagine, for you to just not want to get out of bed in the morning, given everything that you'd been through, that you know, the simple things in life would have been, you just weren't interested in them anymore, eating, sleeping, you just couldn't do it. And yet to take something so tragic and so heartbreaking, I was saying that I commend you for turning it into something positive. The fact that you go into prisons and talk to people who have done some not good things in society, putting it mildly, and speak to them and try and appeal to their better natures and say, look, you've done a bad thing. That doesn't mean that you have to stay being sort of quote unquote a bad person. I think that's incredible, and I think it takes a lot of courage as well.
I think it was driven by, I always said that Rob was a better person than I am. He was, because he's not here anymore, but at the time he was a better person than I am, but was. He was it. I say that because he's got a very positive attitude. Now, I have, but I tend to sort of run with ideas sometimes and stop 3/4 of the way through. Rob doesn't. If there's a fence, he would jump it. He won't just stop, he would jump it. So I adopted Rob's attitude, just to put that extra 25% in that I was missing.
Yeah.
And in his name, this legacy that we was, he left, which was his legacy to us, to make sure that, not make sure, it's an actual thing. I don't know. It's just something that, like I said about this discussion in the office, what would you do if? That's easy. You can make a judgment very easily because you're not involved emotionally. There's no loss. It's just, oh yeah, I would do this, I would do that. But it's when it actually happens is when the true you kicks in.
Yeah.
And I'm not naturally aggressive. So I wanted to make good out of bad, and I didn't want Rob's life to be meaningless. If it meant anything, if he could have gone on to appear in more films of Harry Potter and move on to greater things, that is no longer there for him, and it's no longer there for us to share with him. So using his notoriety, Harry Potter, it elevated us to a platform where most parents that lose a child do not have that platform to speak. They might get 1 or 2 lines in a local newspaper. But because of Harry Potter's influence, the media were interested. So I thought, we can either go into our bedroom and shut the door and pull the curtains, which I did quite a lot, or you can actually try to utilise the power that's been given to us to speak to an audience via the media. The audience is anyone that wants to listen. And people say, how many lives do you think you've saved? I mean, it's unquantifiable. We don't know. Probably none. Might be 100. I don't know. It's unquantifiable. But at least you're trying to reach out. And we know for a fact that the feedback we get from schools that there have been students that have actually said, you know what, I'm not a knife carrier and I don't know one, but I've got a sister and I'm going to look at her differently now. It changes them in another way, not in the purpose that you set out to use, is to stop knife carrying and murders. People are reflecting on the loss of a life and what it means, and they were saying, the feedback was getting, you know, you've helped me in another way, not in the way that you set out to do, which is quite nice, because if you can get, say, 2 siblings that don't get on terribly badly, right?
Yeah.
And now it's like, come on, it's whatever it is. We were told in a positive way that there's some feedback that came back, and it's in more than one instance. So it's although we set out to address knife crime, we were touching people's hearts because of the story that we told. And I always told students when I went to schools and addressing anyone that if you see a tear come from my eye, ignore it. It's only out of love for my son and my loss that it happens. But I said, it only happened for a minute or less. I only say that because I don't want these young students getting upset with seeing me getting upset. So I'll sort of lay out the foundation of what my emotions could be. Don't worry, it will come and it will pass. So, so with the foundation, so we fight knife crime, we've got the film festival and the academy, which is not happening because,
of course,
it's not happening. So
you've done a lot. You've done so much.
Yeah, well, I've tried to also make change. I think the Sun newspaper tried to get hold of me in the early days for them to me to be an MP. That they would sponsor me as an MP, put me up for it, sponsor me to fight knife crime. And I thought, no, I don't want to be someone's puppet. I need to say my words my way. I don't want to be driven by the media. I know what they're after, the story, the inside story, and all that sort of stuff. And I thought, no, we need to do it our way, the way we think it should be done. If the media are interested, we'll speak to them. But I didn't want to go down that road, to be honest.
No, and I think, as you say, you've got important things, but part of that is that it's coming from you in your own words, as you say, and you're not being sort of guided, quote unquote, for any sort of political or, don't get involved in that sort of realm. I think
the reason why I said that is because what brought that to mind was they were saying that I was saying, I think they were saying, let's try and get a 2-year custodial sentence, and they said it won't work. People saying it won't work. And I spoke to the Child and Community Trust chairman, and we had a chat, and he said you probably won't get that. So what I've been pursuing is a mandatory custodial sentence if you're caught carrying a knife. I'm sorry to say it slowly, but I want it to be understood what I'm saying. Because if you say it too fast, it goes over your head. So it's a mandatory custodial sentence if you're caught carrying a knife. When I say custodial, I don't mean put them in a prison. There's some old RAF bases not being used somewhere. You know, you can put them in a custodial place and give them an exit program as well. What you need to do is wrench them away from the gang warfare.
Yeah.
Okay, so get that out of their mentality, and hopefully, you know, some are in a gang because they feel they have to be, because geographically or socially, they are in a gang. If they get pulled away for 3 months, then you don't know what might happen when they go back. They might not. They may choose not to go back to the gang. They may have been shown another way in life. So the reason for a 3-month custodial sentence is to get them away from what they're doing, prevent them from doing something they could do, may do, I don't know, but they could do if they're carrying knives. Why carrying a knife? And also by taking them, extracting them, taking them off the street to be turned around, hopefully, after a 3-month period. With the exit program, you don't know. If you can halve the knife carriage, you might halve the problem, which is a positive move. And I think since Rob died, I think this has shocked me. It's over 2,500 people have been murdered, not just maimed with a knife. Now that number's gone up since I last looked, I think. Now, the reason why I'm shocked is because although it happens on a daily basis, you are fed the ones and the twos. They don't come to a sum.
Yeah. So
okay,
true.
So it's another one. And we also there's another one. There's another murder. There's another murder. But you forget the collective sum, and it's shocked me. 2,500. When are we going to learn about knives and knife carrying, and how we should prevent knife carrying? If you outlaw knife carrying, there's bound to be some reduction somewhere in knife crime. You can't stop them all because some social things where it's a domestic flare-up or something. Yeah, those things probably would happen because the drawers are in the kitchen drawer. So the knives are in the kitchen drawer. So to have a proactive, which I referred to earlier on, a proactive attitude towards knife carrying. I can't see why it's not been adopted, to be honest, because the knife carrier, don't forget I said before, knives aren't a problem, it's the carrier. The knife carrier will be the person put in custodial sentence, not the knife. The knife gets thrown away or gets put back in the drawer. It's the person that takes them, and what we have to do is to recycle their brain and say, this is why it's wrong. This is what could happen to you. There are other paths to take, and they probably never thought about that. They probably never thought about consequences. Oh Christ, yeah. What happened if? So I'll be in prison for 20 years. I won't be able to see my family. So when I come out, I'll be 30, 40 years of age. So some people don't even think about that. They might just think about how tough it is. I think I read a House of Commons report in 2008 or 9 that was drawn up, and it was massive. But within that, there's a question asked of young people: is there a deterrent for carrying a knife? And some of the responses were, well, no, because we were more worried about getting stopped by the police than a sentence that may follow should something happen, because there was no deterrent. Okay,
Yeah.
Caught carrying a knife, get slapped on the back of the hand, and we go out and play in the playground again. So that was actually the people on the street that probably carrying knives that were saying that there's no deterrent, and that was back in 2008 and 9. They saw that as a thing.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be a thing. The thing should be, if you're caught carrying a knife. Now, the police can differentiate, supposing a man's got stopped in a car, and in his car he's got a box and there's a knife in it. Well, he's a carpenter. The police will say, well, okay, well, make sure it's locked and move him on his way.
Yeah.
If they saw a young person or a person with a knife tucked down the back of their trousers or down their sock, there's reason there to arrest them. Why would you want to put a knife down your sock or the back of your trousers? And there's reasonable grounds for arrest. Take them to court and let the court decide if that was an illegal act. And if it's an illegal act, 3 months custodial sentence. Thank you very much. It's simple.
Yeah.
I think Jack Straw was, what was he, Home Secretary at the time for Labour? Jack Straw. He come out and said, what we will do, we'll increase the sentence. This is like after someone's been murdered, now this is their reaction. We will increase the sentence from 20 to 25 years for murder. And I thought, hang on a minute. This just costs Labour nothing. You've raised the bar now to 25 years, but that really won't kick in financially until years down the line. Labour Party would not have to have paid out then more money. What they're saying is the person that's been found guilty of a murder under existing law would be only spend 20 years in prison. Jack Straw was saying they'll spend 25 years in prison. So it only came into effect after 20 years' time, because there's 20 laid out anyway.
Yeah.
And to get 25, you've got to go through 20 years first. So what Jack Straw put out was fantastic, but he doesn't kick in for another 20 years' time. Someone may tomorrow be found guilty of a murder and been given 25 years, but the cost doesn't kick in until 20 years down the line.
Yeah.
So I thought, that's a bit of a backslide. I mean, it hasn't cost us anything, guys. We've changed the law, but there's no kicking of extra finances until 20 years down the line. So I thought that was a reactive reaction, not a proactive.
Yeah.
And what I'm talking about with custodial sentence is proactive, stopping and not chasing down murderers and let families down, to be honest. I've got something that didn't really slot in. Well, it comes under any other business.
Time for any other business.
Okay. Your son's been killed. Worst time in your life. Oh, Christ, another thing just popped up. Knowing that his body has to go through post-mortem.
Oh.
And the thought that your body's son's been cut up. I know he's been stabbed and he's dead, but I'd actually thumped walls. I was literally screaming my head off, thumping walls. And then I found out that the defence had the same right. So there was a second post-mortem and I thumped the walls again. And this is something, it was very hard. The very last time I saw Rob was it in the hospital in Orpington. Yeah. And it was after the post-mortems had taken place. And I went there with Rob's mum, Rob's sister, Jamie, my son, and the grandparents to say our goodbyes to Robert. And we sat in the ante-room, and Sally went in with her sister first. That's Rob's mum and Julie. They came out, and Julie's a very upbeat person. She said, Colin, you've got to go in. He looks lovely. You've got to go in. I wasn't going to go in because I remember when my dad died, and I wish I hadn't, because I wanted the remembrance to be pictures of him alive and not past. So, and I wanted to do the same with Rob. I've got happy memories. I wanted to keep those. I didn't want a dark memory. But Julie said you've got to go and see him. So I went in there, and he looked okay. But speaking to a son that was dead, saying your last words. And the weirdest thing was bending down to say goodbye for the last time after you finished your words, was kissing him on the forehead, and he was cold. It was so to kiss your son for the first time when he's born, his pink face, and he's like a couple of minutes old, you're full of joy. And then 17 years later, plus, you haven't said goodbye to a person that can't hear you, in hospital again. And to feel, I've always hugged my son, but to feel the temperature of his forehead, stone cold, was like kissing a brick. And I found that hard, very hard. I didn't want to go in anyway, but what an explosion of emotion that was. And the thing with Rob's murder is, like all cases, they go to the Crown Court up at the Old Bailey, and it took nearly a year for that to come around. It lasted for 2 weeks, the trial. And people say, well, once the person's been found guilty, you get closure. We don't really. You get justice. And people say, was it strong enough? No, I mean, that if there was capital punishment around, I would endorse it for that type of person. But I had to accept, which was law, the only thing they could hand down officially by law. So that had to be what was. He got 20 years. And people say you got closure. Well, no, we got justice, but at least all the court case was out the way. But a strange thing happened. Not so long after that, a week or two, a man was suspected. A tabloid newspaper had been approached by a man that was offering to sell Rob's mortuary post-mortem photographs. This is my son's body on the slab in colour, which was used as evidence in court. He wanted to sell them for £10,000. So they tracked this guy and eventually arrested him, and he made numerous court appearances over the next year, which I attended every time he was in court. So although after 1 year people say, did you get closure? No, I got justice. But closure wasn't there, and it made it even worse, finding out this person that was found guilty of what he'd done was lasting another year. So I made sure that every time he was in court, and sometimes he didn't show. So I went up there on a fool's errand, and so I think that lasted, I don't know. But fortunately, I still had my family liaison officer supporting me, and she was lovely. So that was another kicker. After, not only did you losing your son in horrific circumstances, you get people feeding off, trying to financially feed off Rob's demise, his death, and his family's emotions by trying to sell those pictures. I don't know how people had the gall to do that. I mean, for £10,000. But you never
where's the humanity?
I don't think the newspaper would have sold them, they wouldn't have printed them.
Well, I wouldn't think they'd be allowed to in any event, but no. It's the humanity or the lack thereof of humanity.
Yes. Exactly.
That's shocking, I think.
Words for your listeners. If there are any people out there that know anyone that carries a knife, try to dissuade them. Don't put yourself in the front line and put your face in their face. Try to steer them away. There is a better way, because knives aren't the answer. There's a couple of things that go wrong. You could try to use it and lose it, and someone uses it on you.
Yeah.
That's one scenario, and another one which is not good is the fact that you've killed someone. In actual fact, you've killed yourself and you killed your family, Because if you kill someone and you're found guilty, you're going to spend a long time under Her Majesty's pleasure in prison for a minimum of 20 years. So all the things that you will lose, you will lose. There is no future for you, because when you come out of prison after your 20 years or 25 years stint, whatever the case is at the time, what's your future from there? You're now 30 to 40 years of age. Your CV doesn't look that good, does it?
No.
You've got nowhere to go, so you're probably going to plop back where you came from. But if there's anyone there that knows people that carries knives, report them. There's no shame in because that person may kill your sister or brother. That person may kill your aunt or uncle. It could kill a policeman. It could kill a fireman. It could kill anyone. Even girls aren't immune to being stabbed. So don't think that you're doing the wrong thing by grassing people up or being a snitch. You're doing the right thing, because that person, why would a person carry a knife? Like how they say, for my defence. I say bullshit. All right? If you want a defence, use your legs and run away. There's your defence, right? If you carry a knife, it is classed as a weapon, unless it's used for cutting bread, which is different. If someone you know is carrying a knife, you're endorsing them to do whatever they want once that knife gets in their hand. You can't just turn a blind eye. And if anyone knows someone that does carry a knife, report it to the police. I don't know what the police would do, because could they arrest them? I don't know. But they could put a watch alert on them. It's all about saving lives, not putting people in prison for murder. Murder's the after event. That's the reactive. I want the proactive, which is preventing the use of a knife. People get maimed. There's probably thousands and thousands of more people, because the numbers I think are submitted by the hospitals, and I bet you that the numbers of people, incidents of people being stabbed, is probably higher, because if they hadn't got the time to write the report out, I mean, send the information back to where it goes in some central database, then those numbers wouldn't appear as the grand sum of people being attacked by a knife. So I'm pretty sure the number will be higher. And knife crime runs into the £1 or £2 billion a year. You talk about the police, the ambulance, the courts, magistrates. All that's a collective sum, and it is. This was back in 2008. I think it's been 1.5 and 2 billion pound a year. If you talk about all the agencies that get involved, people might say, well, they're getting paid anyway, but that is the sum they're talking about. Anything that's involved. Why should we tie down the hospital staff by telling the people that are using knives? You know?
It's, if I can sort of add on to the point you just made, there's two things that have really stood out to me based on what our conversation today. One of which is when you said about that list of 20 things that people love. Value those 20 things. If you really love those 20 things, protect them. Because as soon as you go to prison, they're, as you said, they're gone. You have to be responsible for yourself. But as you said, a loved one, if you've got a loved one who carries a knife, it might be that they kill someone, God forbid, but it also might be that in sort of, I don't want to say dropping them in it, but if you report it to the police, it might be that you're actually saving them. You just don't know.
We could have a word with them first and discourage them.
Yeah.
And if you're that fearful, I mean, you don't know how things happen why they happen when they happen. They just happen.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. And if you do have a knife, there's every chance you're going to use it. Every chance.
Yeah.
And as I say, the difference between a knife carrier and a murderer is a split second. Depends how your mind is functioning at the time. All this panic and shouting that's going on, and your natural state of your base mentality kicks in. If you're naturally aggressive, you're going to pull the knife out. Well, you may not have seen the other three guys with a knife that you pulled a knife on, but they all of a sudden they appear with one each. So there's 4 knives in play. And the first guy that produced one, thinking he's being, the big I am, pulls out a knife, and the other 3 guys go, do you know what? They all pull one. So now you've got 4 guys doing a dance with knives. Someone's going to get killed. If you haven't got a knife, I can't see the sense in carrying knives. Just can't.
No, neither can I. And Colin, I want to thank you so much for sharing your story. I got tearful at times because it is so hard to hear. And you've shared such intimate details. But the one thing, so I am going to be putting details of the foundation and the academy in the show notes for the podcast. So please, anyone listening, go and have a look. Support them if you can, because Rob's story is just one of so many. And if we can do anything to try and combat knife crime, it'll be safer for our children, for our loved ones, and we can hopefully try and stop these kind of horrible, hideous acts from happening. So thank you so much, Colin, for today.
And you can also thanks to Students Verdict podcast. Thanks for having me on today.
No problem
at all.
How long have
you been chatting for?
We're currently, to those listening, we are currently at 1 hour and 17.
Oh, that's short. I think with Steve it was 3 hours.
Honestly, you've just got so many like gold nuggets, Colin, that nobody wants to. We just want to let you talk.
Oh, I'll tell you about something else that happened at number 10. You remember me talking about Rob and he likes to have fun and stuff? And I went to number 10 to speak to Gordon. And do you remember the film Love, Actually?
Yes. Yeah.
Remember those yellow walls?
Yeah.
With the pictures of the prime ministers going up the stairs?
Yeah.
Well, they actually exist, okay?
Excellent.
And I got halfway up the stairs and I remembered Hugh Grant dancing down the stairs as the Prime Minister. I turned around and come downstairs waving my arms in the air just like Hugh Grant did. And everyone walking up past me, what the hell's he on? And I thought that's what Rob would do. But I actually done it in Rob's memory because I knew he would have done that. He would have done that.
Such an amazing tribute. I love that.
The greatest inspiration to do that initially was the colour of the walls. I mean, it's Love Actually. This is Love Actually scene. No, it's not. It's number 10. And he got these sort of winding stairs and these grandiose stairs to go up to the hall upstairs. And you get halfway up and you think, nah, Hugh Grant. So I still do have my sense of humour, although I've been through a hell of a lot. That's something that's helped me, especially when I used to work. It's great work with my colleagues and still have fun because I still have a life to lead. But you never forget. Have fun, but don't forget. Let's
see. I don't need to say anything else. Thank you so much, Colin.
Thanks again, Emma. It's nice talking to you.
And you. Thank you.
Podcast.
I don't want to take away from what Colin has said, so I'm just going to say that's the end of this special bonus episode. Thank you so much for joining me today. The Students Verdict is a bi-weekly podcast, so follow us on social media to hear about our next episode. I will also let you all know when the documentary comes out. Please make sure that you watch it. It's amazing, absolutely incredible. See you on the next one. And let's keep each other safe.